Podcast Movement 2021 is officially in the history books. I was there. I went, I saw, I met a lot of great people. I learned a lot of good stuff. Now, it's takeaway time. Here are my 5 biggest takeaways from Podcast Movement 2021, live from Nashville, Tennessee. Now, if you're a podcaster or a content creator and you've never checked out Podcast Movement, they officially receive my stamp of approval. But you have to go to these events or any event that involves networking or learning with an open mind and with realistic expectations. And that leads me into my number 5 takeaway from Podcast Movement 2021. Okay, so admittedly, when I booked my ticket, I knew I was going to network with people, but I also had some crazy ideas in my mind, and I'm going to share them now. I had this idea because I booked 30 minutes in the HubSpot Podcast Pavilion, and I went down there thinking, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to corner John Lee Dumas or Mark Cuban or somebody that's got this big name, and I want to sit down and I want to have a podcast interview with them. And I think I was there for maybe 5 minutes when I realized how just absolutely crazy and ridiculous that thought was. And here's the reason. You need to know why you're there. And I needed to find out why I was going there. And what I learned is I could get a lot more from networking with like-minded people, people that I knew, people that were on my level, people that I had talked to on the internet leading up to this event. There was much more to gain from that than by bum rushing one of these guys that has earned their spot. And, you know, I think about it from the standpoint of maybe someday I take that back. Someday I'm absolutely going to be on that level. And I'm going to talk to him then. So whenever you're looking at these networking events or big conventions, anything in your space that can help you get better, know why you're there. Know what you're going there for. Set some objectives and keep it realistic. Whenever you're at any type of function where you're around other people, it does not pay to be a wallflower. You can't stand in the corner, stand up against the wall, and not put yourself out there. These events are designed for you to meet new people and network and build some new relationships. But if you're not willing to come out of your shell and start a conversation with somebody, then chances are you're not going to get a lot from it. So whenever you're at any type of convention, any type of event where there's an opportunity to build some new relationships and learn some new ideas from like-minded people, be present, be outgoing, and be that person that starts the conversation. You'll thank yourself the next day. Alright, so admittedly, I didn't really need Podcast Movement to sell me on how great being a guest on other podcasts is. That's kind of my thing. But I can't tell you how much I came home with. It was valuable. There was so much talk there. I mean, and I should say, Tom Schwab of Interview Valet gave a tremendous presentation. It was on the last day. It was my favorite of the entire event. I learned a ton from him. I got some reassurance that I'm on the right track with some of the things I'm doing. So very good stuff there. But as podcasters, just in general and at the event in Nashville, a lot of talk was surrounding growth. And it always is. We're always looking for ways that we can get new listeners onto our show. And we want to grow. And there are methodical ways to do that. And you want to make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. You're not just trying to blow numbers up just to increase and inflate a vanity metric. But in my opinion, being a guest on other podcasts is the number one way to do it because you open up so many opportunities for collaboration. You can touch so many different audiences, and when you provide value to those audiences, they're going to come looking for you. So whether you're trying to sell a product, provide a service, or just get more listeners on your podcast, go on other podcasts. Be a guest. Knock your interview out of the park. Help those podcasters create great content. And people are going to come knocking down your door. So my last 2 takeaways were from the great Tom Webster of Edison Research. His keynote was on Wednesday morning. and was a tremendous way to get that day kicked off. And I should say also, Kate Erickson of Entrepreneurs on Fire also gave her keynote before Tom. Her content was phenomenal too. But Tom touched on a point that I'm always trying to look at, and that's mastering your craft. That's something you should always be cognizant of, no matter what space you're in, whether you're trying to create videos, create a podcast, blogs, you name it. If you are doing something that's creative, if you are doing something to better yourself, no matter what it is, all you can focus on is getting a little better each day. And as in regards to mastering your craft, that's really all it takes, is just paying attention to the little things that you're doing and just trying to get a little bit better each day. In John Lee Dumas's book, he talks about getting 1% better every day, and I firmly believe in that concept. And that's something that I try to focus on with everything I'm doing, and it's really all you can ask for. So master your craft. No matter what your approach is, make sure that you're keeping that front of mind. And my number one takeaway from Podcast Movement 2021. So this concept of recommendability was part of Tom Webster's keynote speech. And when I heard that word, it just struck such a powerful chord. It just made so much sense to me. And I don't know why it never struck a chord sooner, but I think we complicate things to a degree where we almost want to pull our hair out and just drive ourselves insane. But when you think about it, it's really so simple. Be recommendable. Put yourself in a position to where what you're creating and what you're giving the world makes one person want to recommend it to a friend. Because when they recommend it to a friend, that person's going to recommend it to a friend. And then they might recommend it to two friends, and so on and so forth. And it's just building this exponential growth of awesomeness that, again, we get locked up in how we're creating content for social media and how often do we need to go live on Instagram and so on and so on and so on. There's so many things that we can do, but the number one philosophy that we should all be focusing on is to be recommendable. Make your content something that you are proud to recommend and that someone else is proud to recommend as well. So in a nutshell, that is Podcast Movement 2021. Obviously, there is a lot more that I got from the event, a lot more things I can talk about, and I most likely will in future videos. But if you liked what you heard today, please drop a comment below. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you were at Podcast Movement 2021, I would love to hear your biggest takeaway from the event. Drop it in the comments below, and I'll be sure to strike up a conversation with you when I see that comment. End of video.